The darkness of the forest canopy above seemed impenetrable, a living tapestry woven from ancient branches and creeping vines. Beneath this natural cathedral, where moonlight filtered through in fragmented beams, a lone figure trudged along a barely discernible path. Dr. Ethan Carter, an astrophysicist turned field researcher, had spent the last 3 years embedded in one of humanity's most ambitious undertakings, Project Celestial Concord. The mission aimed to study the unprecedented cosmic phenomenon that had appeared beyond Earth's atmosphere, a vast, shimmering portal that defied every known law of physics. Ethan's boots crunched against the damp earth as he adjusted the weight of his equipment-laden backpack. The air carried an unusual charge tonight, thick with electricity and something else, something indefinable that prickled at the edges of his consciousness. His handheld scanner, typically a reliable companion in these solitary expeditions, emitted erratic pulses of light, its readings fluctuating wildly between recognizable electromagnetic patterns and inexplicable anomalies. The device's instability mirrored the turmoil within him, a gnawing sense that tonight would be different from all the others. As he pushed deeper into the uncharted territory, the surrounding vegetation grew denser, almost deliberately obstructive. Ancient trees twisted skyward in impossible angles, their bark etched with luminescent veins that pulsed gently in syncopation with some unseen rhythm. The wildlife had fallen silent, an unnatural hush that pressed against his eardrums like a physical weight. Even the nocturnal insects, usually a constant symphony of chirps and clicks, had ceased their nightly performance. His research team had established numerous monitoring stations throughout this region, but none had captured anything substantial. Only fleeting glimpses of what they believed might be extraterrestrial activity. Yet tonight, everything felt different. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end as he registered subtle changes in the environment. The temperature dropping several degrees, the ground beneath his feet vibrating with a low-frequency hum that resonated through his bones. The scanner's display now showed cascading streams of data that made no logical sense, patterns that danced across the screen like living hieroglyphs. Ethan paused, his breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. He could feel it now, a presence, not merely physical but somehow penetrating the very fabric of reality around him. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something momentous to occur. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to retreat to the safety of the research base, but his scientific curiosity battled fiercely against his primal fear. This was what he had dedicated his life to understanding: the unknown, the mysterious forces that defied human comprehension. As he stood there, torn between flight and investigation, the atmosphere shifted again. The luminescent veins in the trees brightened, casting an otherworldly glow that transformed the forest into a cathedral of light. The ground trembled more noticeably now, and the air crackled with energy that raised goosebumps across his skin. Somewhere deep within this alien-lit sanctuary, something, or someone, was approaching. Ethan tightened his grip on the scanner, his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared himself for whatever revelation awaited him in this extraordinary night. Through the pulsating luminescence of the forest, she emerged with a grace that defied earthly physics. Her form materialized gradually, as if the very air molecules were weaving themselves into her being. At first glance, she appeared human-like, standing approximately 7 feet tall, but closer inspection revealed intricate details that marked her as something far beyond terrestrial biology. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, shifting through hues of opalescent blue and silver, catching and refracting light in impossible ways. Delicate, crystalline structures extended from her temples, forming elaborate, organic-looking antennae that pulsed with inner light. Her eyes captivated Ethan completely, enormous orbs that dominated her face, filled with swirling galaxies that seemed to contain entire universes within their depths. When she moved, her long limbs glided rather than walked, each step generating faint ripples in the air around her. Her attire, if it could be called that, appeared composed of flowing, liquid-like material that constantly shifted patterns, reminiscent of auroras dancing across polar skies. The garment seemed alive, responding to her emotions with subtle color changes and luminous displays that seemed to communicate without words. What struck Ethan most profoundly wasn't just her physical beauty, which transcended any conventional human standards, but the aura of immense wisdom and ancient knowledge that radiated from her presence. She carried herself with a regal bearing that commanded respect without demanding it, her movements precise yet fluid, exuding both power and vulnerability simultaneously. Around her neck hung a complex, geometric pendant that seemed to defy dimensional constraints, constantly folding and unfolding itself in mesmerizing patterns. The air around her vibrated with harmonics that resonated through Ethan's very being, creating a symphony of sensations that transcended mere sound. Each subtle gesture of her hands released trails of sparkling particles that lingered momentarily before dissipating into the night. Her lips moved in a way that suggested speech, though no human words emerged. Instead, complex patterns of light and sound wove together in a language that seemed to bypass conventional auditory processing and speak directly to his consciousness. Despite her ethereal nature, there was an undeniable warmth about her presence, a gentle compassion that softened the overwhelming majesty of her appearance. Her gaze met Ethan's, and in that moment, he felt an unprecedented connection, not just between two beings, but between two entirely different orders of existence. The forest itself seemed to bow in reverence to her presence, the luminescent trees dimming their own light as if acknowledging a superior radiance. "You are the only one who understands me, human," her voice finally manifested, not through his ears but directly within his mind, carrying with it layers of meaning that transcended simple translation. The statement wasn't spoken with arrogance or superiority, but rather with a profound sadness and longing that resonated deeply within Ethan's soul. In those few words, he sensed centuries of isolation, millennia of searching for connection across the vast gulf of space and species. The declaration caught Ethan off guard, sending shockwaves through his consciousness. His initial reaction was one of disbelief. He, a minor astrophysicist from a small research project, chosen by an alien queen? Yet as her words resonated through his mind, he realized they weren't merely spoken in English or any human language. They carried with them an intimate understanding of his thoughts, his fears, his hopes, things he'd never verbalized to anyone. The realization struck him like a thunderbolt. She wasn't just communicating with him. She was connecting on a fundamental level that bypassed conventional barriers of communication. A flood of memories surged through his mind. Childhood moments of staring at the stars, feeling an inexplicable kinship with the cosmos, late nights poring over ancient texts about celestial phenomena, the countless hours spent alone in observatories, searching for answers to questions that most humans didn't even think to ask. These weren't random recollections. They were being shared, examined, understood by this magnificent being before him. She saw not just who he was, but who he could become, and somehow recognized in him qualities that resonated with her own existence. Ethan's knees threatened to buckle under the weight of this revelation. The scanner in his hand became irrelevant, its blinking lights and erratic readings meaningless compared to the direct neural interface occurring between them. He felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that went beyond physical nakedness. It was as if she could see every aspect of his being, every hidden thought, every secret desire. Yet instead of feeling violated, he experienced an overwhelming sense of acceptance, of being truly seen for the first time in his life. Her presence evoked conflicting emotions within him: awe at her majesty, fear of her power, and an unexpected surge of protectiveness. Despite her apparent strength and regal bearing, he perceived underlying currents of loneliness and weariness in her being. The galaxies swirling in her eyes told stories of civilizations risen and fallen, of countless attempts at connection met with failure or misunderstanding. And somehow, amidst all this, she had identified him, a mere human, as possessing the capacity to bridge the chasm between their vastly different worlds. As he struggled to process this monumental encounter, Ethan realized that his scientific training, his years of studying the mysteries of the universe, had prepared him for everything except this moment. All his previous assumptions about alien contact, that it would involve deciphering languages, building communication protocols, establishing diplomatic relations, seemed laughably inadequate now. This was raw, unfiltered connection on a quantum level, bypassing technology and methodology altogether. The forest around them seemed to enhance this connection, the luminescent trees dimming further as if giving them privacy for this unprecedented meeting of minds. The air between them crackled with potential energy, charged with possibilities that stretched beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Ethan found himself wondering if this was how ancient shamans felt when communing with spirits, or how prophets experienced divine revelations. But even these comparisons fell short of capturing the magnitude of what was happening. In that suspended moment, as the alien queen maintained her penetrating gaze, Ethan understood that this wasn't just about communication or understanding. It was about something far deeper, something that transcended individual beings or species. It was about the fundamental connections that bound all conscious entities across the cosmos, threads of awareness that wove through the fabric of existence itself. And somehow, impossibly, he had been chosen to help untangle these threads, to help this magnificent being make sense of her place in the universe. and perhaps to help humanity understand its own role in the grand cosmic tapestry. The alien queen's presence emanated waves of emotion that rippled through Ethan's consciousness, each sensation carrying layers of meaning that transcended human experience. Through their mysterious connection, he perceived her frustration, a deep-seated irritation at the limitations of her own kind's understanding, compounded by the inability of countless other species to grasp the complexities of her existence. Her people, advanced beyond human comprehension in many ways, remained trapped within rigid frameworks of thought that left no room for the intuitive leaps she so desperately needed to make. He sensed her desperation, not born of weakness but of responsibility too great for any single being to bear. As their connection deepened, flashes of memory, not his own, surfaced in his mind. Council chambers filled with beings whose forms defied description, their voices creating harmonic patterns that spoke of division and stagnation. Decisions made through cold logic alone, proposals dismissed because they couldn't be reduced to mathematical equations or empirical data. Her attempts to introduce new perspectives met with resistance so absolute that it bordered on hostility, leaving her increasingly isolated within her own society. The Queen's loneliness manifested as a physical ache within Ethan's chest, a void created by centuries of failed attempts to find common ground with others. He witnessed, through her eyes, diplomatic missions to dozens of worlds, each ending in misunderstanding or outright rejection. Species too primitive to comprehend her messages, others too entrenched in their own cultural paradigms to consider alternative ways of thinking. Some had interpreted her advances as threats, others as opportunities for exploitation. None had responded with the openness she so desperately sought. Most poignant of all was her despair at witnessing the slow decay of cosmic harmony. Through their connection, Ethan perceived vast networks of interstellar relationships unraveling, ancient alliances fracturing under the weight of miscommunication and mistrust. Entire sectors of space falling into chaos as beings retreated into their own shells of existence, unable or unwilling to maintain connections with others. The Queen bore witness to this disintegration, powerless to prevent it despite her position of authority, watching as the rich tapestry of galactic civilization unraveled thread by thread. Yet amid this sea of negative emotions, Ethan detected something else, something that burned brighter than all the rest. A spark of hope, carefully nurtured despite everything, fueled by her unwavering belief in the possibility of true understanding between different forms of consciousness. This hope manifested in her choice to approach him, in her willingness to risk everything by making herself vulnerable to a human, a species her advisors would undoubtedly consider beneath consideration. Through their connection, he understood that she saw in humanity not just potential, but a chaotic, unpredictable nature that might hold the key to breaking through the barriers that had imprisoned her people, and countless others, for millennia. The Queen's emotional state communicated volumes about the stakes involved. This wasn't merely a personal quest for companionship or validation. It represented a crucial turning point in galactic history. Through Ethan's human perspective, she hoped to unlock new pathways of thought, to forge connections that could potentially heal the fractures spreading through interstellar society. The weight of this responsibility pressed heavily upon her, evident in the subtle trembling of her crystalline features and the pulse of her geometric pendant. As they stood there, connected through their unprecedented link, Ethan began to understand why she had chosen him specifically. His own experiences with academic institutions, his struggles against rigid methodologies in scientific research, his innate ability to perceive patterns beyond traditional frameworks, all these qualities resonated with her own challenges. She recognized in him a kindred spirit, someone who had fought similar battles against institutional blindness, albeit on a much smaller scale. Their shared frustration with limited perspectives created a bridge between their vastly different existences, allowing for a depth of understanding that transcended mere words or concepts. The Queen's decision to approach him carried immense risks. Her people would likely view this action as reckless, a betrayal of protocol and tradition. Other species might interpret it as a sign of weakness or manipulation. Yet she persisted, driven by a conviction that transcended political considerations or personal safety. Through their connection, Ethan felt a resolve strengthening within her, a determination to pursue this path regardless of consequences. The intensity of her commitment overwhelmed him, forcing him to confront the reality that their encounter represented far more than a chance meeting in an alien forest. It marked the beginning of something potentially world-changing. As their connection deepened, Ethan found himself inundated with visions that transcended linear time and space. Through the Queen's consciousness, he witnessed civilizations rising and falling like waves upon a cosmic shore. He saw empires that spanned entire galaxies, their technologies so advanced they appeared indistinguishable from magic. Yet each success story carried within it the seeds of its own destruction. Arrogance breeding complacency, power corrupting wisdom, progress outpacing moral development. These cycles repeated across millions of worlds, creating patterns that the Queen had spent millennia attempting to comprehend and alter. The visions revealed something even more profound: the interconnectedness of all intelligent life throughout the universe. What humanity had dismissed as coincidence or random evolution appeared to Ethan now as deliberate design, a grand symphony of consciousness orchestrated by forces beyond current understanding. The Queen showed him how each species contributed unique notes to this cosmic composition, their development influenced by invisible threads that wove through spacetime. Some threads strengthened bonds between species, while others created barriers that prevented mutual understanding. Barriers that had grown increasingly insurmountable over eons. Through this expanded perspective, Ethan grasped the true significance of the Queen's plight. Her people, once vibrant contributors to this universal harmony, had become trapped within their own success. Their advancement had created walls of logic and reason so impermeable that they could no longer perceive the irrational, the intuitive, the mystical aspects of existence that bound all conscious beings together. They had mastered the mechanics of existence but lost touch with its essence, becoming prisoners of their own enlightenment. The implications for humanity became starkly clear. Earth stood at a crossroads similar to the one the Queen's species had faced millennia ago. Human technological progress accelerated exponentially, while spiritual and philosophical understanding lagged behind. The Queen saw in humanity's chaotic development a reflection of her own people's past, before they had sealed themselves within their intellectual fortress. She recognized that humans still retained access to the intuitive, the emotional, the irrational aspects of consciousness that her species had sacrificed in pursuit of pure logic. Their connection revealed a disturbing truth about the current state of galactic affairs. The cosmic web of consciousness was fraying, its threads snapping under the weight of miscommunication and misunderstanding. Entire sectors of space had become isolationist, species retreating into their own bubbles of existence rather than risking contamination of their carefully constructed realities. Trade routes that once facilitated not just commerce but cultural exchange had become militarized zones. Diplomatic channels that should have fostered understanding had devolved into arenas for posturing and power plays. Most alarming was the revelation that this disintegration wasn't merely social or political. It manifested physically in the fabric of space-time itself. Through the Queen's enhanced perception, Ethan observed distortions in the cosmic background radiation, anomalies that shouldn't exist according to current scientific understanding. These disturbances correlated directly with regions of intense conflict or complete withdrawal from interstellar society. The universe itself seemed to be recoiling from the growing discord among its inhabitants. The Queen's mission took on new dimensions of urgency. She wasn't just seeking personal understanding or attempting to break free from her people's constraints. She was trying to prevent the collapse of an entire system of cosmic relationships. Her approach to Ethan represented a desperate attempt to re-establish connections before they became irreparably severed. Through their link, he perceived the existence of similar efforts across the galaxy, other beings attempting to bridge divides between species, to mend the tears in the universal fabric before they spread too far. This broader context illuminated the true nature of their connection. The Queen hadn't chosen Ethan merely because he was receptive to her message. She had selected him because humanity represented a critical juncture in cosmic evolution. Earth's position, both chronologically and developmentally, placed it at a unique intersection of influences. The decisions humanity made in the coming decades would ripple through the galactic community, affecting species light years away in ways that defied conventional understanding of causality. Through their shared consciousness, Ethan began to perceive patterns that suggested humanity's role in this cosmic drama wasn't accidental. The timing of their technological advancement, the particular combination of rational and intuitive thinking, even the planet's position within the galaxy, all these factors aligned in ways that suggested careful orchestration. The Queen's people had recognized this pattern centuries ago but had been unable to fully comprehend or influence it due to their self-imposed limitations. The revelation forced Ethan to reconsider everything he thought he knew about human evolution and progress. The challenges facing Earth, environmental degradation, social inequality, technological disruption, appeared in a new light when viewed through the lens of cosmic significance. These weren't just local issues to be solved for their immediate impact. They represented critical tests in humanity's development, trials that would determine whether the species could contribute positively to the universal harmony or add to its disintegration. As their connection continued to deepen, Ethan realized that the Queen's approach carried implications far beyond their immediate encounter. Success or failure in establishing true understanding between their species would send shockwaves through the galactic community. Other species watched, waiting to see if humanity could rise to the challenge, if this seemingly insignificant world could provide the key to unlocking a new era of cosmic cooperation, or if it would succumb to the same destructive patterns that had plagued advanced civilizations throughout history. The weight of this cosmic responsibility settled heavily upon Ethan's shoulders. Through their connection, he felt the collective attention of countless beings focused on this singular moment in the alien forest. The success or failure of their interaction would resonate through the galactic community, influencing decisions made in distant star systems and affecting the lives of beings he would never meet. The Queen's people watched with a mixture of hope and skepticism, their rigid framework of thought struggling to process the possibility of meaningful connection with a species they considered primitive. Other advanced civilizations monitored the situation with varying degrees of interest, some seeing potential allies in humanity, others viewing them as threats to be contained or eliminated. Ethan's own species presented perhaps the greatest challenge. If word of this encounter reached Earth's governments and scientific communities, the response would likely be chaotic and potentially disastrous. Military factions would push for containment and analysis, treating the Queen as either a threat to neutralize or a resource to exploit. Scientific institutions would demand rigorous testing and documentation, attempting to reduce this profound connection to measurable data points. Political leaders would vie for control of the situation, each pursuing agendas that prioritized national interests over cosmic significance. The media would transform their encounter into spectacle, reducing the Queen's majesty and the gravity of their connection to sensational headlines and simplistic narratives. Public opinion would fracture along predictable lines, some embracing the possibility of cosmic cooperation, others rejecting it as either impossible or undesirable. Religious organizations might condemn the encounter as blasphemous, while others might attempt to incorporate it into existing doctrines, distorting its true nature in the process. Perhaps most concerning was the possibility of rogue actors, corporations seeking to profit from alien technology, extremist groups viewing the encounter as validation of their beliefs, or individuals driven by personal ambition. Any one of these elements could derail the delicate process of establishing genuine understanding between species. The Queen's presence on Earth would become a lightning rod for humanity's darkest impulses, threatening to transform this moment of cosmic significance into a spectacle of greed, fear, and violence. Even within the scientific community, Ethan foresaw significant obstacles. His colleagues would demand proof, evidence that could be independently verified and replicated. They would struggle to accept the validity of their mental connection, insisting on traditional methods of communication and verification that would inevitably fail to capture the essence of their interaction. The very nature of their bond, transcending language, culture, and species, would be dismissed as impossible or fraudulent by many who couldn't personally experience it. The Queen's own people posed another layer of complexity. Their rigid adherence to logic and protocol would likely lead them to view her actions as reckless or treasonous. Should they discover her whereabouts, they might attempt to intervene, potentially escalating the situation into interstellar conflict. The diplomatic ramifications of such an intervention could destabilize fragile alliances throughout the galaxy, triggering chain reactions of mistrust and aggression. Throughout the galaxy, other species would respond to news of their encounter according to their own cultural paradigms. Some would see opportunity in humanity's newfound connection, attempting to insert themselves into the situation for their own benefit. Others would view it as a threat to their own positions of power or influence, possibly taking preemptive action to prevent humanity from advancing too quickly on the galactic stage. The balance of power in various star systems could shift dramatically based on how different species interpreted and responded to this development. The environmental impact of maintaining contact also presented unforeseen challenges. The presence of such an advanced being on Earth could fundamentally alter ecological systems, potentially disrupting delicate balances that scientists had yet to fully understand. The energy signatures associated with their connection might attract unwanted attention from predatory species or trigger defensive mechanisms built into the fabric of spacetime itself. Ethan's position as the sole human capable of truly understanding the Queen placed him in an impossible situation. Maintaining their connection required constant exposure to levels of consciousness that threatened to overwhelm his human limitations. The strain of containing such vast knowledge and responsibility manifested physically in increasing headaches and fatigue, while psychologically he grappled with the burden of secrets that could reshape human understanding of reality. Each moment of contact pushed him closer to a threshold beyond which lay either transcendence or madness. As dawn approached, painting the alien-lit forest with streaks of natural light, Ethan found himself standing at a precipice of decision. The Queen's presence remained steady beside him, her iridescent form now catching the first rays of sunlight in dazzling displays of color. Through their connection, he felt the weight of expectation pressing upon them both, not just from their immediate surroundings, but from countless beings across the galaxy who watched this moment unfold through ripples in the cosmic fabric. The choices before them demanded courage beyond anything either had previously faced. For the Queen, the path forward meant defying centuries of tradition and protocol established by her people. Each moment she remained on Earth increased the risk of discovery by her own kind, who would view her actions as betrayal of their carefully maintained order. Yet returning now would mean abandoning not just her hopes for meaningful connection, but potentially condemning her species to continued isolation within their self-imposed intellectual prison. The decision required her to embrace uncertainty, to trust in the chaotic nature of human consciousness to guide her toward solutions her people's rigid logic could never conceive. Ethan's dilemma proved equally complex. Revealing their connection to his research team or superiors would unleash a cascade of consequences he couldn't fully predict or control. The scientific community's demand for verification and replication would destroy the delicate mental link they shared, reducing their profound interaction to sterile data points and measurements. Yet keeping their encounter secret carried its own dangers, forcing him to navigate an increasingly complex web of deception while bearing the burden of knowledge that could reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The forest around them seemed to acknowledge the gravity of their situation, the luminescent trees pulsing in slower, more deliberate rhythms. The air vibrated with possibilities, each potential decision path branching into infinite variations of future events. Through their connection, Ethan perceived the Queen's calculations, complex probability matrices that accounted for variables ranging from human psychological responses to galactic political dynamics. Yet amid all these calculations, he sensed her growing appreciation for the value of intuition, of trusting instincts honed through millennia of experience. Their options narrowed to several distinct paths, each carrying its own set of risks and rewards. They could attempt to establish a covert line of communication, using Ethan as a conduit for sharing knowledge while maintaining plausible deniability about the Queen's presence. This approach would require extraordinary measures to conceal their activities from both human authorities and the Queen's people, potentially involving other members of Project Celestial Concord in their secret. The benefits of gradual knowledge exchange must be weighed against the danger of discovery and the ethical implications of selective information sharing. Alternatively, they could pursue a more radical course, revealing the Queen's existence to humanity through carefully controlled circumstances. This option carried the highest risk of immediate backlash but offered the potential for rapid advancement in human understanding. The challenge lay in identifying trustworthy intermediaries who could help manage the situation without succumbing to personal ambition or institutional pressures. The Queen's safety would depend entirely on humanity's ability to rise above its baser instincts, a gamble that made Ethan's stomach churn with anxiety. A third possibility emerged through their deepening connection, attempting to create a hybrid space where human and alien consciousness could interact freely, shielded from outside interference. This would require manipulating the very fabric of space-time, creating a pocket dimension that existed partially within Earth's reality and partially within the Queen's realm. The technical challenges were daunting, but more concerning was the potential impact on both their psyches. Maintaining such a construct might demand sacrifices neither was prepared to make. As they contemplated these options, Ethan became acutely aware of the temporal pressure mounting around them. The Queen's presence on Earth couldn't remain hidden indefinitely, nor could the effects of their connection continue without consequence. Already, subtle changes in local space-time geometry hinted at the growing strain their interaction placed on the surrounding environment. The forest's luminescence pulsed with increasing intensity, and distant instruments at the research base recorded anomalous readings that would soon demand explanation. Through their connection, Ethan perceived the Queen's growing determination to pursue a fourth, even more daring option, one that combined elements of all the others while introducing a revolutionary concept. She proposed creating a network of understanding, starting with Ethan but expanding to include carefully selected individuals from both their species. This network would function as a living bridge between worlds, allowing for gradual adaptation and integration rather than sudden, potentially catastrophic revelation. The idea resonated deeply with Ethan, though he immediately recognized the logistical nightmare of implementation. Each option carried its own timeline for action, with windows of opportunity rapidly closing. The Queen's people operated on timescales that made human decision-making appear instantaneous, yet even by their standards, time was running short. Ethan felt the pressure mounting through their connection, a ticking clock that measured not just minutes or hours, but the stability of their very reality. The choices they made in the coming moments would determine not just their immediate future, but potentially the trajectory of interstellar relations for generations to come. As the first birds began their morning chorus, Ethan realized that whatever path they chose, it would require them to embrace uncertainty, to trust in the strength of their connection and the possibility that their combined consciousness could navigate challenges neither could face alone. The Queen's crystalline features reflected the growing light, her expression unreadable yet somehow reassuring. Together, they stood on the threshold of something unprecedented, their next steps poised to redefine the boundaries of understanding between species and reshape the cosmic landscape in ways neither could fully anticipate.